I started my career in education as a homeschool teacher. I was a private tutor to a group of kids from 6th to 8th grade, and I always describe the experience as having been almost magical. These kids loved school. They loved coming to school every day and learning the story of history. They loved talking about great classics of literature. They loved even the writing process. They learned and mastered it, and they enjoyed the process of getting their thoughts down clearly on paper. And this is very much in contrast to my own experience as a public school educated child. So it was a beautiful thing to see just how enthusiastic kids could be for the daily experience and content of learning. Now, I had them from 6th to 8th grade, and then it was time for them to go to high school. So I'll never forget the day that I took one of them to a local private high school to investigate it as a possibility for her. And the director of admissions, in this first introduction to the school, immediately went into what she would need to do at the school in order to cultivate a resume for high school. She would need to be in the IB program. She would need to take AP exams. She would need to maintain a high GPA. She would need to do a sport. The whole thing was about, while you're here, you're going to be cultivating a resume so that you can get into the best college possible. Similarly, I recently went to a presentation by an East Coast boarding school of life at that school for prospective students. And I brought my own daughters along just so that they could get a little glimpse of what high school life was like. And I listened to the presentation, which again focused on what do you need to do in order to be accepted to this school. You need to do volunteer work, you need to have a high GPA, you need to impress the interviewer. And when we came out of this presentation, my daughter looked at me and said, "Mom?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "How come they didn't talk about the classes at all?" Being a child very motivated by the content of her education right now, she went into this presentation of the high school eager to learn about the classes. What would she be learning? What would she learn over and above what she's doing right now? And she was really excited to hear that, and there was no talk of that at all. So I also have seen this theme reflected recently in the Common Core standards that have been proposed as a guideline for public schools around the nation. And in the Common Core standards, there's a recurrent theme, which is that the goal of education through high school is readiness for college and career. That's an educator's goal all the way through the high school years, readiness for college and career. Now, I would describe the purpose as very different. I would say the goal of education is readiness for life. We are trying to give them the skills, the knowledge, the information, the ability that they need in order to thrive as informed, intelligent, productive, happy adults. And maybe this sounds unimportant. I think it's deeply and crucially important. The language that you use, the overall focus in describing the purpose of education. I think it informs every aspect of the approach and the curriculum and everything you do. What is your basic view of the purpose? If you regard it as preparation for college and career, for example, that's going to affect what you include in the curriculum. Do you include what's going to best cultivate a clear resume for them to get into a good college? Or are you going to include what you regard as most important for them to understand in order to be a mature and informed adult? It's going to affect what your expectations are of the child. Are you going to expect that they be able to perform in an easily measurable, demonstrable way? Or is your expectation that this material will affect them in a deep and personal and meaningful way? So I want to challenge this language, this basic premise and assumption in the dialogue, and say, let's stop talking about the goal of education as readiness for college and career and start focusing on it as readiness for life.